Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Blocked Magazine. And today I've got a really impressive guest, I have to say. And before I introduce who she is, I'm going to show you what Morrissey said about our guest. So he said, the UK is a dangerously hateful place now, and I think we need someone to put a stop to the lunacy and to speak for everyone. I see Anne-Marie Waters as this person. She is extremely intelligent, ferociously dedicated to this country. She is very engaging, and also very funny at times. So, welcome, Anne-Marie Waters.
Hi.
So, Anne-Marie, for our viewers that are in America, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why I've invited you on the show?
Well, I used to be in politics until a couple of months ago. I figured out, because I thought about it briefly, that I'd been political activist for 18 years.
Wow.
I've written 2 books. I was leader of a political party which I founded myself. And I was probably the mainstream will call me a far-right activist, which is strange because I actually came from Labour. I used to be a member of the Labour Party, an activist in the Labour Party. And I don't think it was me that changed. I think it was Labour that changed, and I found it intolerable. I'm a working class girl. I still stand for working class people, but the Labour Party doesn't.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the Labour Party is now probably a far left party, isn't it? Would you compare it to the Democrat Party?
Yes.
In America?
Yes, yeah. Would I denounce it?
Right. No, would you compare it to it?
Yes, I would, yeah. It's probably, yeah. I mean, actually, I think America is probably even worse off. I mean, we have a 2-party system, Conservatives and Labour, but America, at least we have a couple more. We have the Liberal Democrats with some seats, and the Scottish Nationalists. They're all lefties.
The Greens.
The Greens. But America really does have only those 2 parties. Yeah. So they're pretty even worse than us for a 2-party state. But yeah, I started speaking out. The first public speaking I did was against Sharia law. And then Islam, and I studied the Quran and the Hadiths, and when I read horrified me, and that started me down that journey really, and away from the left and into what is now apparently the far right.
Yeah, so the label far right. What do you make of that? Because you're not far right, are you? Where would you say you are middle or to the right of middle?
I kind of probably neither. I believe in standing for the working classes, but I also believe in patriotism and in borders and national identity. So I guess one of them puts me on the left, the other one puts me on the right. I support the NHS. That would put me on the left. But I believe in a capitalist free market, which would put me on the right. The NHS to me is different. I don't think that healthcare should be a market product. So I guess I'm a little bit of both. I think I try to take the best of both. So I take the best of the left and the best of the right. And that was sort of what I tried to do with For Britain. But I think part of the problem is that when you do that, you don't quite identify with anybody. So those on the left hate you, and hate is the right word, for the parts of you that are on the right, and those on the right hate you for the parts of you that are on the left.
And to be fair, you have had it from all sides. You have been vilified. I mean, I remember years ago, you used to be on TV quite a lot. You was on, the Sunday morning shows, for example. I can't remember the name of it now. The Big Questions, I used to see you on quite regularly. And then all of a sudden, bang, we never saw you again on TV. Yeah. And every time you were anywhere around TV, you were being silenced. You weren't allowed to say. So this is why I mean, I know my platform is tiny, but I wanted you to be able to speak, because we knitters, the people that are going to be watching this, I don't know whether you know about this, but we've been vilified as well. And a couple of years ago, when Donald Trump was president and when he was being elected, a very large and famous knitting company called Ravelry made a statement that said that anybody that supported Donald Trump was unequivocally racist and a white supremacist. And basically the knitting world, you can imagine this, the knitting world has kind of become this hateful place where anybody that doesn't fit in with the other people are racist, evil, bigots of every description. And we've had a lot of people that have suffered, but what you have gone through is completely out of the leagues of what's gone on for the knitters. It's multiplied by 10. And is there anything that you can tell us about what they've done to you? What the left have done? It's probably difficult, isn't it? Without
it's you go from being denounced as an Islamophobe, which actually, when I say denounced, called, I am an Islamophobe. I'll acknowledge. That initially, and then it becomes racist, then it becomes fascist, it becomes the point where I'm not able to attend things because it's not safe for me. I'm not able to hold public meetings. They'll get venues shut down. I've had police shutting down venues but pretending not to, by which I mean if I book a venue for somewhere to speak, it's often the police that will get it shut down.
Right.
I was standing for Parliament a few years ago now, and there was a hustings event being held, and there were hundreds of people outside of it protesting against me being there, and I wasn't able to attend, and the police told me not to attend for my own safety.
And just to be clear, the party, your party that you created and that you represented, was completely legal. There was nothing, you weren't, I don't know what the word is when you're not allowed to have a political party anymore. I forgot what that word is. You've never had anything proven, or there's only ever been accusations made. Yeah. And if you think about that, the fact that a legitimate political party in a so-called democratic country was forbidden from standing and answering questions, and it reminds me of when Nick Griffin and the British National Party, he finally got on the TV and he was on Question Time, and he kind of made a bit of a fool of himself. I don't know whether you remember. Well, you will remember.
I do remember it. Yeah.
And it was kind of the end of his party. So if you were truly what they said you were, they would want you on the TV so that they could ridicule what you had to say. That's what I find so infuriating. And recently I was accused by one of the lefty knitters of being associated with your party. Obviously I'm a Nazi and I'm evil or whatever. So what I did in response was I took screenshots of your manifesto. Now, I'm not going to go into the manifesto now, but if it's still on the internet, please go and look it up and read it. Because to me, it was the fairest manifesto I think I've ever read of any party ever. And little things were, like the animal welfare aspect of it. You never got any credit for that, in the wider arena. And I think you're the only person or the only party to ever have such a well thought out animal welfare manifesto point, I think. Sorry, I've gone off my point then. So can I ask what has happened to the party?
We shut it down. We shut it down for a few reasons. The results at the ballot box for every small party is ridiculous. If you added together the result of every small party, you still wouldn't get anywhere near the big parties. It was becoming ever more dangerous. Since the lockdown, support had completely collapsed. Now, I've said, I will come back to politics, I really will, but I said before, I am willing to make sacrifices, and I was treated really, really badly. And objectively speaking, I'm a very happy person. I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I love the experience. But objectively speaking, I think people had a particular hatred for me, from the left and from the right. And so I was treated very, very badly. It was becoming more and more dangerous for me. Now, I'm willing to make those sacrifices, but not for nothing. And if people aren't going to support, if people aren't going to get behind us, then I'm not going to make those sacrifices any longer. And I can't be any more honest than that. So,
do you think it kind of I mean, I know this happened before you started the party, but was it Nigel Farage's comments, do you think, that kind of cemented opinion about you?
Hugely.
Yeah, because it was almost like if even Nigel Farage thinks this woman's bad, then because what happened there? Because when he resigned as leader, you stood and you should have won for UKIP, shouldn't you? Is it right that you had more support than the other candidate?
I certainly had more support the whole way through. It was a long process. This went on for about 3 months. It was absolutely exhausting. I definitely had most support in pretty much every hustings. In fact, I think it was we were about a third of the way through when Henry Bolton, the eventual winner, came on board. So he wasn't even there to begin with. When it was obvious that I was in the lead in terms of party member support, then along came Henry Bolton. With any respect to his due, which I'm not sure how much that is, but he started, it was absolutely dreadful when he started. His speeches were all self-congratulatory, nothing about what he would do for the country. So he started to change his speeches to be a lot more like mine as the process went on. And then I was told about rumours that, it's like play school, but sadly that's politics. It's a poisonous place. Terrible rumours about me were deliberately spread inside the party. I'm told, initiated by Nigel Farage. They used to hold meetings. Farage would call meetings of the MEPs to discuss how to stop me from winning.
Wow.
He called me the most appalling names. He's. I'm not a fan of his, and he's even in wider policy, he's let things down a lot. When he sold out quite a bit on Brexit. He handed over to the Conservatives, knowing full well they weren't going to deliver Brexit. He said that immigration was no longer a salient issue, when I think it's the most important issue. And he does this in order to stay on television, which is, fine. We all have to make a living, but this is what he did. Fact, and that's what he did.
I suppose he was also thinking about his career after Brexit, because that was his whole existence, wasn't it, with Brexit? And once that happened, at least in theory, he had to have something else to do.
In some ways, it's understandable, but in other ways, it's betraying. It's typical politician, isn't it? Saying what isn't true, or downplaying important matters in order to keep themselves.
Do you think, though, that this is why, without being putting it down, do you think this is why the party has kind of failed? Because you stuck to your points. You've never changed. You've always said the same things, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've never been wishy-washy and suddenly said, "Oh no, migration isn't an issue for this country." You've always stood by that.
First of all, I don't think the party did fail. And that's not my ego talking. We did better of any of the parties on our side of politics. We were doing better than them, but it was still appalling. I think my party. There are several reasons. One of them, when I went into this, I thought, can you succeed in politics while telling the truth? And that was a sort of personal question. And the answer is no, I don't think you can. I don't think honest people can succeed in politics. I think the more devious you are, the higher you're going to climb. It's a very nasty business, and that's okay. You can accept to a degree the nastiness of it, but part of me just wants a more peaceful life.
Well, speaking of a more peaceful life, and diving into the knitting aspect now, are you a knitter?
Yes and no. And I say yes because I have been, but I think it'd probably be a little bit of an exaggeration because I haven't knitted anything for quite a while. But I'll tell you what, my mum was a knitter, and she used to do it for a living. So I don't know if you know what an aran jumper is.
Yes, yeah.
So it's an Irish, I think Scottish as well.
Yeah.
She used to hand knit those for an American company when I was a kid. So we had to help with rolling up the balls of wool, and it was a sort of a family project, was to get the wool ready for my mum to knit these aran jumpers. So I did it a little bit at school, but then I hadn't thought about it since school or since I was a kid. And then lockdown came, and I was looking for things to do during lockdown. And I thought, well, here's an opportunity. You can't go anywhere or do anything, stuck at home all the time. Here's an opportunity to pick up some new hobbies and try some new things. So I thought, I don't know why I thought of knitting, but I did. And I really enjoyed it. And I ended up knitting about 3 or 4 things only. So,
Well, I remember when you first said you were going to do some knitting, because I think you did it you mentioned it on a podcast or a vlog, and I think I contacted you and said, whatever you do, don't start with the scarf.
And I did.
So how easy was it to? So did you knit when you were a little girl then with your mum? So
yes,
you knew,
a little bit, but not much. And
how easy was it to pick it up?
I had to do some. I watched YouTube videos, so I got my wool and my needles, and then I watched how to cast on. I had to watch a YouTube video for that, so I followed the YouTube video. Made so many mistakes, and so plain knit and purl is pretty much all I could do, and so I made so many mistakes, and I just unwound, pulled the whole thing apart, and started again. I had a lot of time on my hands. But yeah, eventually I got there, and I was able to I wouldn't be able to do anything complicated, but eventually I was able to knit a scarf, and I knitted a few of them. I did. You asked me to bring something on.
Yeah.
So I have. This is
oh wow,
a snood.
Ah yeah.
Which is basically a scarf that I've never heard of them, but there is a
It's
scarf.
like a huge cowl, isn't it? It
Yeah.
kind of goes over your head, doesn't it?
Yeah, that. So I knitted this. Probably one of my favourite things I've knitted, actually, but very simple and very basic.
Did you learn how to seam it together? So did you do it in one long piece and then seam it?
I did one long piece, yeah, and then I stitched it together. I don't know where the seam is.
Ah, well, that's good. That means you did it really well. If you can't find
good,
it,
isn't it? Oh, there it is. Oh, I'm quite impressed with that. I have no idea. Yeah, there it is. There's the seam.
And do you remember what wool you used or what yarn you used?
Oh God, no! Just probably the biggest one I could find, and some nice thick needles. The rest of them I did were presents, so I don't have them with me. But I will knit something again. I really will. I intend to do something a little bit more complicated. I had set myself an ambitious target of knitting a jumper.
It's not as hard as you think, honestly. It's not as hard as you think. And if you can cast on by looking at a video, you can do everything in knitting, because you obviously can just watch it and then just copy it. And sweaters aren't as hard. The only thing hard about a sweater is getting it to fit. Okay. Because it's still only knit and purl, because that's all it is in knitting, just knit and purl. So I'm going to sort of put you on the spot and say, when are you going to knit your sweater?
Oh, God. A good question. Okay. Well, I'll start it. I'll tell you what. When I've got it done, I'll come back on.
Yeah,
I will. I'll do it. I'm going to do it. You've motivated me now.
Yeah, shamed you into doing it. Yeah. Where do you get your patterns from? So when you decide to do something, where do you look?
The internet.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
So for a sweater, what kind of sweater would you like? What do you want? Just a plain one, or would you like something a little bit snazzy, or an aran? Would you like an aran? I'd love
to do an aran. I would, but I have a feeling it's really complicated.
Yes and no. Yes and no. If you were going to start an aran, I would say start with an aran hat, or start with something small first. Okay. But I'm saying it's easy. It's easy when you know how, but when you don't know, yeah. But do you remember your mum knitting aran then? So do you remember what she did, or did you just sort of see it from afar?
No, I don't. I'm sure she could tell me. I mean, I've got.
Oh yeah, because she's still around, isn't she? She's still there. Yeah. Does she still knit now?
No, she hasn't done for years. She hasn't done for years.
Yeah, because your mum's not here, is she? She's in Ireland, isn't she? So it's not like you can pop round and get her to show you how to do stuff, is it? Yeah.
No.
So also, you didn't just start knitting, did you? You also did some other things during lockdown, and I can't remember all of them, but you started playing chess.
I did.
Have you continued?
I haven't really. No, God, you are shaming me now. I'm going to have to take. Something that I did do a lot of was yoga and meditation. I have continued with that. I literally do that daily, every day. It's been a lifesaver to me. Something else I took up, which I love, is Lego.
Yes, I remember seeing those now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it the cities you were making, the London and Paris? Yeah. How many did you do?
I've done maybe about 8 now, but I've moved into other things as well. I've got a octopus at the moment on my little shelf thing. Yeah, so Lego is something else I took up and fell in love with and have continued.
So that's you prefer that to knitting then?
Yeah, must do. Yeah.
Ooh, everyone's switching off now.
No, I'm going to knit that jumper. I am. I'm going to knit an aran jumper. Right.
Well,
if you need that commitment now, I'm going to knit an aran jumper.
Okay, I'll. If you need help trying to choose a pattern, let me know, and I'll see if I can come up with anything. Oh, one other thing that you did during lockdown was a Japanese thing where you have smashed cups and you glue them together or something. I can't.
Yeah.
Did you ever do it? I know you bought a pack, but I don't know whether you did it.
I did. It didn't come out very well, unfortunately.
Was it like a mutant cup?
Yes, I chucked it in the bin in the end.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it was. I was throwing myself into loads of different things. Some of them stuck. Of course, I've had to go back to work since then, but you don't have as much time. Some of them stuck. Some of them have been life-changing. But knitting, I really do like, and I've sort of let it slip. So that's one I am going to go back to. And that's true. I'm not just saying that because you're a knitting shop.
Well, if we book you in for next year after Christmas, and then we'll have to see.
Okay.
It's okay if you've just cast on. You don't need a finished sweater. As long as you've cast it on, that'll be okay. What was the other thing I was going to ask you about the knitting? It's gone now. It's to do with your mum. So did your mum, did it become just work for your mum, or did she enjoy doing it as well? Because that tends to happen, doesn't it? If you're doing it for money, it loses its magic, I think.
Yeah. I don't know for certain, but the fact that she gave it up sort of hints that it became less of a pleasure.
Yeah.
That's my guess. Actually, no, I'm going to ask her that. But she gave it up and hasn't done it since. So I'm guessing that the working aspect of it took a lot of the pleasure out of it for her.
Yeah, see, for me, it was to replace an addiction, because I was addicted to cigarettes, and I was a chain smoker, and decided, right, that's it. I'm going to give up on this day. I planned it in advance. I got the needles, got the wool, and every time I wanted a cigarette, I knitted a row, and I became addicted. And now I have an addiction for wool, so I just keep buying it and not necessarily knitting anything with it. So it's just piling up and piling up and piling up. So you don't want to get like me if you do carry on. You don't want to get that crazy.
I remember you telling me that in an email, because I had said I was going to try and give up smoking. I haven't. But that's maybe I'll. I really want to, and I know for people who don't smoke, it probably sounds really. Well, if you really want to, you can, but
it's not that easy.
It's not that easy.
There's different aspects to it, isn't there? Because I tried about 4 or 5 times. I read the Alan Carr book. Do you remember that book? Everyone had that at one point. And I tried about 4 times. But the last time I just knew that it was going to work. And I don't know why I knew that it was going to work, but it just happened that way, And so I really have every sympathy for people that have failed to give up smoking, because it is not as simple as people think. Because your whole social life revolves around it, doesn't it? If you go anywhere, you chat to the smokers, and the smokers will talk back to you. Whereas if you're not a smoker, you end up sort of just stood there. There's something about that cigarette that bonds other people with that cigarette, isn't it? It's weird.
It's that powerful thought, isn't it? That thought that I've been smoking for about 3 decades, and you are so used to you're so used to it. I'll just have a quick fag before I do this, or I'll just have a quick cigarette after I do that, and then you have a break, and you think, oh, I'll just have a quick cigarette, and then I'll do. It sort of punctuates your day, and you're so used to it that your brain just wants it automatically. And
but don't you find it strange that if you get on a plane or if you go to the cinema, you know you can't smoke for that period of time, and you can just do it? But the moment you walk out, that's the first thing you go for, isn't it? It's a cigarette.
It is a matter of the mind, and that the mind's not that easy to control or change. It is controllable, but it's not easy.
One of the other things that you did during lockdown, which was brilliant, I have to say, I watched all your videos. You did the How to Survive the Madness series, didn't you? Was it 7 or 8 videos?
Oh,
and they were really good, which is where you talked about your knitting and your. But you were talking about meditation a lot, and was it the being in the moment? You know, not, and I just wondered if you could just talk for a couple of minutes about that and how that's affected you.
Yeah, I think we are the thinking mind that we have is both the greatest thing and the worst thing that humans have in us. Our minds are very powerful, but they're also very chaotic, and they go off in a million different directions. And we have an ability to stand back and observe our own mind and control our own mind. And I don't think people realize that they can do that. They think that they are their mind. They think that all these thoughts running around in their head, that's who they are. But it isn't. They are an observer of all those thoughts. There's something deeper than our thinking mind. And that's presence to me. That's what I call it. I call it presence. So when you are observing your thinking mind and you realize it's going crazy and you stop identifying with it, and you just look around you and see, well, here I am. I'm here. I'm now. I'm in my kitchen. My 2 cats are there. There's no, we create problems with our thinking mind. For example, we worry about the future, things that are probably not going to happen. So we can put ourselves through all sorts of agony and anguish, worrying about things that are never going to happen. We destroy our lives worrying about that's just the mind.
The reality of anything is never as bad as how you imagine it, is it?
Absolutely, but it's unlikely to happen. And even if it did, it won't be nearly as bad as you think it was going to be. You can spend just as much energy and anguish on regret and reliving things in the past. No, I wish that hadn't happened. I wish that. This is your mind going crazy. Stand back. And I think one thing I've learned through meditation is that we are not our thinking minds. It is part of us. It's not us.
Here's a weird one for you. This is something that happens to me. So you see if you've got any advice for this. I had a moment in my life that haunts me. And it's a silly moment that shouldn't mean anything. It was when I got my degree at university. You go on the stage and you have to shake the person's hand. And what this woman did, nobody told me what was going to happen. And she put her hands on either side of my hands, as if you were like praying. And I just stood there and I kind of waited. And she kept her hands on my hands and didn't take them off. So I just stood there waiting for her to take her hands off. And I kind of, in that moment, I was there for a while, thinking, what do I do here? And then in the end, I just walked away. But it was noticeable. And that haunts me. That moment, that single moment, I think about it a lot. Every time I see a graduation ceremony, I think about that moment. And I think, why did I do that? But I know it's because I didn't know what to do. But how do you move away from that and forget that?
You have you have to just make a choice to drop it.
Because it's weird. It's like, why do I want to keep thinking about it?
That's where the control of the mind comes from. Now, I'm no Zen master. I haven't perfected this by any means. But you can't. That's where control of the mind comes from. You can decide to just let it go. Drop it. It's like picking up, people talk about the baggage that you're carrying. You pick up all this weight throughout your life, all the things that happen to you, all the things you think are silly things you've done, and you carry them around like massive big weight on your shoulders. And you genuinely do have a choice to just drop it. Just 2 big bags of regret, worry, just drop them.
Only 2?
Just drop them. And do you think anyone else in the world, well, Anyone else
cares.
at that event that day is still thinking about that.
Absolutely not. It's only me. I mean, I know I should let it go, but it does haunt me. It's weird. It's very strange. I think it's that public. I mean, I don't know whether you ever got dreams where you dreamt you were naked in front of people, doing a speech. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? You're exposed in front of people, and then you say or do something stupid. And but like you say, nobody will remember.
No.
Nobody will even know because it's years ago. It's decades ago. But anyway, it's still there. Anyway, so if anyone wants to, I think they should try and watch your How to Survive the Madness, because there's still a lot of madness going on in the world, and it was all to do with the whole that thing that was spreading around that we're probably not even allowed to mention. But earlier on, you said that you were an Islamophobic or an Islamophobe, and I just wondered if you could, which leads us into the next part of the interview, is tell me why you're an Islamophobe.
Because Islam is, I believe in truth and evidence. Mm-hmm. So we're living in a world of pretense, of lies. Same thing. People are pretending because they know a nice Muslim at work, or so-and-so is a nice Muslim. We are pretending, in order not to offend nice Muslims, we are pretending that Islam is something that it isn't. Islam, I have studied the Quran and its accompanying texts over many, many years. I know this religion and I know it very well. And I can say this objectively, and I would invite people to go and read it for themselves. It is extremely violent. It is authoritarian, totalitarian. It controls every aspect of the lives of its people. It also insists upon global domination and global rule. It is a few things I care about. I care about free speech. I care about our freedoms to live our lives as we see fit. I care about my own sex. I care about animals. I care about living in a civilized society based upon secular, compassionate values, based on truth and evidence. All of those are not only threatened by Islam, but the threat is we've moved beyond a threat. You only have to look at Salman Rushdie. You only have to look at Charlie Hebdo. You only have to look at all the terror. We're beyond a threat. It's actually killing us. If you then people will, if I say look at the scriptures, and you'll see that it is a violent, totalitarian religion. My cat is trying very hard to get out of this room. Hold on, I think she's got some assistance coming. My apologies for this.
That's all right. I've got 3 and they've been crawling about all around here while we've been talking. So
absolutely lovely. I love them. Okay, she's gone. Where was I? Okay, if I was to say look at the scriptures and see for yourself, read it for yourself, you can do that. Then people will drift into whataboutery. Well, what about the Bible? What about it? Look, first of all, we're not talking about the Bible, we're talking about the Quran. So that's. But secondly, the horrible things that are in the Quran are not in the Bible. And thirdly, if there are things in the Bible like stoning, for example, we no longer practice them because we went through a period of enlightenment and the various scientific revolution and various different things in Europe over centuries. So we no longer practice things like
Jesus. If you're a Christian, for example, then really you should be looking at the New Testament before you look at the Old Testament. And Jesus was against stoning people. I don't think there's anything that Jesus said that was particularly bad. The Old Testament there is some bad things in, and the Quran is kind of an abridged Old Testament, isn't it, in a way? Because I've read it as well. There's it's much shorter. But what do you say about, or what do you say to people that would say it's not all Muslims? I know you mentioned that before, but not all Muslims are bad. How would you answer that?
Well, I'm fully aware of that. But of the Muslims that I've engaged with over the years, I find a couple of things. One, they know I'm right about what about what I'm saying about the Quran, but they deny it anyway because there's a sort of a protective bubble around them. We mustn't let this white girl, as I've been called many times, dictate or tell us that there's something wrong with our religion. Let's protect our religion. Yeah. But they know full well that what I'm saying is true. I've many times had Muslims call me racist and far right, even though they must know that what I'm saying about the Quran is true. That's a very, very, that's a nasty, nasty thing to do. The other one, and this is even more common, is Muslims don't actually know the Quran. They are cultural Muslims, if you like. This is their family and their community, and they will be raised on the odd little tidbit that happens to be out of context, very pleasant.
It reminds me of my mum. She was a Catholic, and in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, in the Mass, it was in Latin. And she didn't speak Latin. I mean, she knew some of it, but she recited all of this stuff in Latin. The Bible was in Latin. She didn't know what was in it. And it's the same, isn't it? Because not every Muslim understands Arabic. Some do, perhaps a lot do. But the thing I've found, I mean, because obviously I'm with you on this, you know that. I mean, I've read the Quran as well in English. But when you say you've read it in English, the response is usually, oh, but that won't be an authorized version.
Right.
You know, or it's a misinterpretation. You need to read it in the Arabic, you know.
Right. Here's my answer to that. If you look at the scholars, for want of a better word, of Islam around the world, you're talking senior people from Al-Azhar or, you know, the what is it called? The team of mullahs that advise the Iranian leadership or the leadership of Saudi Arabia. All of these people, they call themselves scholars. They've studied Islam in Arabic. And what is it that they do? They initiate, they live in, if you look at Iran, for example, Iran has a Sharia council which makes sure that all laws in the country are adherent to the Sharia. They are experts on the Quran in Arabic. They have, and what do? They stone people to death. They amputate limbs. All of the horrors that I'm talking about. So the experts agree with me. I haven't read it in Arabic. I've read it in English. But the experts who know it inside out in Arabic, they agree with me.
Yeah.
They are the evidence, you know, and I said it, you know, the evidence isn't just in the scriptures, the evidence is in the countries that most adhere to those scriptures. So Iran and Saudi Arabia are the two most glaring, I suppose. And look at them, but barbarism. And it's similar. Now, one is Shia, one is Sunni, but they still the same barbarism. That barbarism carries no matter where. And you can go from, you can have Iran and then Somalia. We're often told these horrors are cultural. Well, Iran and Somalia are two completely different ethnicities, completely different cultures, but they have the same, the Islamists in Somalia do carry out the same barbaric acts as they do in Iran. Why? Because of the religion teaches it.
Because I mean, believe it or not, I do have some Muslim friends, but the irony is that they would be perceived as being either lapsed Muslims or bad Muslims, or what's the word, when not apostates, not quite apostates, you know, where they drink alcohol, for example, or they have sex out of, well, we're getting onto that in a second, probably, or even gay. You know, I've got one Muslim friend who's gay, and his story is horrific. You know, what he did, I'll quickly tell this, he was about to be married off because they wanted him married rather than him being gay. And the only way he could escape his family was buying a dog. So he bought a dog. He knew he didn't have any idea how to deal with this dog, but it kept them away from his house because they wouldn't enter a house that had a dog. So, I mean, you've probably heard of this before as well. And he was able to then escape. But now he lives in hiding. He lives in fear. So he's very, very careful about who knows even what part of the city he lives in. Because his family, and the one thing he says is that the family isn't just the family; it's a huge network of cousins and aunties and uncles. So wherever he goes, he says he's seen by somebody, and it gets reported back. So my argument about the the nice Muslims is there are some nice Muslims, but it's how ingrained that religion is in them depends on how nice they are. You know, I think that's the thing. You know.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that's sort of been coming out in America about Britain is the grooming gangs. And I mean, this has been a huge thing here for decades, hasn't it? But it's been in the news for probably 10 years, maybe. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's been going on since the 70s at least. When I wrote my book, Beyond Terror, I investigated this. I spoke to a lot of people. This has been going on since, quite frankly, since a significant Muslim population has been in this country. Grooming gangs and rape gangs have been a reality. They have gotten away with it for all that time. They're still getting away with it. I mean, we talk about, we have these token arrests now, and they are token arrests. It is, if we arrest someone, then the public will think we're doing something about it, and they'll feel a little bit more relaxed about it. What the situation in Rotherham, which is probably the name synonymous with grooming gangs, unfortunately for the people of Rotherham, the situation now is actually worse in Rotherham than it was prior to the J report. The numbers are higher, and I know that because I know people who work in this field. But if you produce a report and the government talks about it, the public is convinced something's being done about this. Yeah. I can stop worrying about it. It's political theatre. It's picking a couple of examples, and we'll splash this all over the paper. The people will.
Can I just show this? I'll put this on the screen now. So, hang on, how can I do this? Here we go. You can still see us there. So this is like an example, isn't it, of people that have been convicted. So all of these faces are convicted groomers, paedophiles, rapists. I don't know which or all of them. Now, so you're saying these? So say for example, there's 9 or 8 in one particular area. Is that just a tiny number of the people that have actually been involved in this? Or when you see, for example, in Derby, there's been 4 arrests or whatever, does that mean it's over? Is the grooming gang over?
No, it's just not. If you look at Tommy Robinson's The Rape of Britain, which I highly recommend to everyone, he's just on figures that we know about or people who've had accusations against them. He's come to around 40% of the adult Muslims in a town will be involved in this. I think it's higher than that. You really need to watch it. I think it's even higher than that. What happens is, and what the difference is if you have a European guy and he's minded to rape, he's not going to invite his friends and family along to rape with him. He will hide it. He'll be ashamed of it. He's likely, if he invited his friends along, he runs the risk of getting his head kicked in, frankly. So that's a huge difference. They invite their friends and family along. These girls are raped by 10, 12 people at a time, shipped around the country, often higher numbers than that. It is absolutely abhorrent what is done to these girls. And they get away with it, and they get away with it purely because they are Muslims. And one of the reasons that I say that, Muslims, not every Muslim, and when I say Muslims, I don't mean every individual, but I won't, I'm not going to police my language. They are Muslims. Don't like a legal response. They don't like it when the police crack down on something. And I think the police are worried about violent retaliation. If they were to crack down on these grooming gangs, I think they're worried about violent retaliation. They're worried about riots in the streets, and they're right to be worried about that. That's the situation we find ourselves in. So we tiptoe around Muslims in case they will respond violently. And that's one of the reasons they get away with it. The other reason they get away with it is, quite frankly, because our society, for a variety of reasons, has trivialized rape and sexual abuse. Even if you do catch one of these people, you see the prison sentences. I've watched police go to all sorts of lengths to capture online groomers, for example. So I'll give you one example. There's a police unit who's based in Essex, and Channel 4 documented all this. It's still on all 4 Channel 4 streaming service. I think it's called To Catch a Paedophile, so really worth watching. The police put weeks and months of resource into finding this guy and to grooming. They're pretending to be a child talking to this guy. He arranges to meet this child, 12 or 13 years old, at a hotel. He turns up to the hotel with sweets alcohol, and sex toys. He is arrested by the police and he gets 2 years. Why are we trivializing that? You get 10 years for stealing money. You get 20 years potentially for dealing drugs. Now, I'm not saying either of those things are okay, but why only 2 years for clearly being
Wasn't there a case, I don't know that it was in this country, but did somebody put bacon on a mosque door and ended up in prison for a year or 2 years, was it?
And he died in prison.
Did really? Oh, I didn't know that.
He died in prison.
Was he potentially suicided type of thing, or just nobody knows?
Nobody quite knows what happened to him.
Right.
I
didn't realise that.
Kevin something. It was Bristol. His full name escapes me now, but he got substantial prison time for that and died in prison. And there's still been no inquest or response to or public explanation as to how.
Why is it? What is it about our judicial system then that is giving them such light sentences? And just to widen it out, would a white non-Muslim rapist get the same kind of sentence for raping someone as they get for this? Or
I think the sentences are fairly trivial for everyone.
Right.
Again, drug dealers can get 15, 20 years. Rapists, if they're convicted, get 5 at most. 5, 7 years.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
You'd
is it just is it because of the ambiguity of some of the cases where, it's he said, she said, or is it more than that?
If that's only really relevant prior to conviction.
Yeah.
The conviction rate is extraordinarily low. It's below 1% now, which we have a society therefore which has decided that 99% of people who accuse rape are lying, which is an absurd statistic. There's absolutely no way that that's anywhere remotely near true. But even if you're post-conviction, so they've been found guilty, so the he said, she said is no longer relevant. They've been found guilty, and they're still only getting 5 years. They'll serve maybe half of that, but we will put cannabis dealers or cocaine dealers. And again, I'm not elevating those people. I don't think there's anything moral about selling drugs. But you get 15, 20 years for selling drugs. 5 years for rape. I don't understand. You'll have to answer. I have no idea why we are so trivial about rape and sexual abuse. I have no idea.
And you've actually got a background in the law, haven't you? Yeah. Is that what you did your degree in, or did you actually work in that field as well?
Well, I did. I not for long. I finished all my academics. So I did my law degree. I did my post graduate training to become a solicitor. I worked for a while in various different firms. I worked in the government legal service for a while, but only for a couple of years, because it was around that time that I was starting to campaign again. It was actually by studying law that I discovered Sharia law. So my journey started there. So by the time I was looking for real work as a lawyer, I was also Googleable. And if you Googled me, which they did, you would find... So
untouchable now, there's so many things that we could talk about. There's so many avenues, isn't there? But I know we've got to kind of narrow it down slightly, haven't we, to what you're doing now. So we've been talking about rape and what's been happening with the grooming gang. So what is it you're launching at the moment?
It's going to take me a bit of time, I'll be honest. But what I wanted, I discovered through various routes just how little support there is. Emotional support and legal support for people who have been raped. There is, I've known people now who will sit on a waiting list for counselling, just for some support, for a year. This is appalling.
Is that an NHS issue though, or is that a legal issue?
It's across the board. I mean, I guess you could have private counselling, but it costs money, and for people who don't have money. It's NHS, but it's also local government. So the local government will often, for where I live, for example, there's a support team for victims of domestic or sexual abuse, and the waiting list on it is about 9 months long, which I think is really appalling. But also the women and girls who go to the police and who are dismissed, the number of rapes that are alleged and go to no further action. And no one is keeping an eye on the police. So what I would like to do is offer a service that accompanies a rape victim to the police and stays with them, knows the law, and stays with them throughout the legal process. You have the police and the CPS completely dismissing cases which are solid. They have solid evidence. So a 13-year-old girl is pregnant. DNA shows that it's as if Hussein's down the road, who's 35. You know, the baby is proof. She is too young to consent. He's a grown man. Her baby is proof. And yet they don't even charge because there's not enough evidence. For crying out loud. You've
Yeah,
got
because
an awful lot that's evidence.
it doesn't matter if the 13-year-old girl wanted that to happen. That doesn't matter.
No.
That is a rape under the law.
Yes,
That is rape, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah.
Well, here's something. I did jury service. I have to be careful what I can say and can't say. But this was a few years ago, and the case was a rape, and it was a date rape. And the people involved, they were sleeping together in the same bed. They were both drunk. They were only young, and she woke up and he was penetrating her. And she turned around and said, "No, get off me, get off me." And he did. He got off her. But then 10 minutes later, he did it again. And then she said, "Get off me, get off me." And then he did. He left her alone. But then in the morning, he went off. But then she thought about it after and decided that it was rape. And so I was in the jury listening to all of this. And that was basically it. There wasn't much more complicated than that. And so my view on it was that the first time wasn't rape, but the second time was, because she had already said no. But the interesting thing was that the women in the jury were the ones that were on his side more than on her side. And basically, I was outvoted. It was 11 against me. So there was no point even trying to fight that, because they said no, And the thing is, yeah, he probably didn't intend to rape her, but technically, by the law, I felt that was rape. I don't know what you think of, what that would be.
I would say both of them were, because if she was passed out, she couldn't consent either. If she can't consent, it's rape. So she's passed out. But it's interesting what you say about women. It is statistically true that women on juries are harder on rape victims than men. And I have a theory as to why that is. Women are so afraid of being raped. It is an ever-present fear. It's not with you all the time, but it is something that women are terrified of. They're terrified of being raped. And I think a woman is more likely to blame a woman for being raped in order to give herself back a bit of control. If she can say to herself, "I wouldn't have done what she did, and therefore I wouldn't have been raped," it gives her back a little bit of belief that she can avoid this if she does the right things. I think it's a bit of a self-assurance thing. It's that ability to say, "Well, I would never do that, therefore I'm safe." And that's why I think women are a little bit harder on.
So because it hasn't happened to the woman yet, that means she's doing everything right.
Right. And if she just doesn't do what that woman did, she'll still be safe. So to blame her, you shouldn't have done that. If you hadn't have done that, it wouldn't happen to you, is a way of reassuring herself that if I don't do that, it won't happen to me.
And how bad is, we've talked about the grooming gangs and we know that is endemic and it's bad, but is it bad across all cultures within the UK? Is rape a real issue at the moment in this country?
It's the highest it's ever been, according to recorded records. We now have the highest number of rapes on record at the moment.
I think I have. Here we go. This is. I don't know what newspaper this was. It's probably the Telegraph, I think. The highest ever number of rapes. Sorry, Jan, what was that?
Sorry, no, it doesn't matter. I was just saying it looks like the Guardian. But
yeah, I can't actually see how many there are. I don't know whether your eyes are better than mine, but the highest number of rapes ever recorded. The thing is about this, what I wanted to ask is how much of the higher rate of recorded rapes is because there have been more rapes, or how much of it is just that people are now, reporting rape? Do you understand what I'm saying?
In my experience, actually, the numbers of people reporting rape is going down because they don't want to put themselves through it. I think, and this is where the controversial part comes in, and as you know, I don't care about being controversial. We are importing rape.
Right. What do you mean by that? So can you explain that? We are
importing people who are far, far more likely to commit rape than Europeans are. If you only need to look at Norway, Sweden, Denmark. We're no different. It's across Europe. But Norway and Sweden have more clarity on it. So I'll give you an example. A few years ago, there was a report released in Norway, and it had found that in Oslo, and look this up, look it up. I invite people to look up. I don't say anything that isn't true. I look it up. Over a 3-year period in Oslo, 100% of the stranger in the street violent rapes were committed by non-Norwegians. 100% of them.
So we're not talking date rape or spousal
not
rape.
domestic or date rape, but stranger rape, which is and a rape that is extremely violent. 100% of it was committed by non-Norwegians, by what they called non-Western immigrants. You look at Sweden. Now, Sweden has gone, in my lifetime, from the land of ABBA and Pippi Longstockings and Volvo and beautiful blonde people and beautiful countryside and immense beauty. That's how Sweden used to be. That's how we saw Sweden. Sweden is now the second highest rates of rape in the world. Now, how did that happen? Do we really think that Swedish men woke up one morning and went crazy and started raping? They didn't. Sweden has that high level of rape because it imported people from savage cultures. And I make no apology for calling it that. And even, I'm going to quote Nigel Farage now. Nigel Farage was right for once when he said we are importing people from countries in which women are not even second-class citizens. So they come here, they see women living independently, freely, wearing clothes, which they would consider, if you're a girl in shorts during the summer, they consider that an invite to rape her. We have imported this. I stand by that. European men, on the whole, do not behave this way. As I explained to you, a European bloke, if he is minded to rape, he will not tell his friends and family and invite them to join him. He'll be worried about either getting beaten up or being handed over to the police. This is a completely different culture.
Yeah, because this is something I think people overlook, isn't it? Is that if somebody who is white British, for example, is found to either be a paedophile or a rapist or anything like that, everybody completely has nothing to do with that person ever again. They want them in prison. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be your brother. It could be your best friend. That would happen. And there's almost like this belief that we only seem to care that these are foreign rapists and that we are allowing, our own rapists to just carry on and be fine. But that isn't the case, is it?
No, that isn't the case at all.
When you say we're in... Sorry, go on.
People have said to me, well, but why are you only worried about foreign rapists? What about our own? Well, my answer to that is there is rape in every culture. But we are a civilized society. The decent people, even though our leaders who are not decent don't necessarily condemn it or take it seriously, the decent majority loathe rapists and pedophiles. The decent majority of us loathe them. That is not the case in the cultures that are coming to live here. And the second point is, just because you have a criminal in your own society, it does not follow that you then deliberately and knowingly import much, much more of it, which is what we're doing.
It's bad enough that we've got our own. Yeah,
exactly.
That is the kind of thing.
Why make it worse?
One thing that I remember you doing, are you okay for time, by the way?
Yes.
That you did a video where you went down to Dover and I think it was Dover, and you were showing all of those dinghies that the migrants are coming over in. And I was shocked because they weren't cheap. These were, the question I had was, well, who's buying these? Who's supplying them? Is there like a shop over, the other side in France where they're buying them? Who's giving them? And who is coming over on those boats, and why is it significant to what you're talking about now?
Well, who's coming over is the very people I'm talking about. The people who have turned Sweden into a nightmare. The people who have turned Germany into a place that's no longer. When I was 19, I interrailed around Germany on my own. There's no way a 19-year-old woman would be safe to do that in Germany now because of who we've imported. And that's who's coming in on the dinghies. But, that morning, I expected to see the border force, the official import, if you like, of these migrants. I expected to see that. I did not for a second expect to, independently of all of that, go to a beach and actually see dinghies come in on their own.
Oh my
Without
God.
any fanfare. There was no police around. It was literally an empty beach, and dinghies just came in independently and pulled up on the shore. The occupants rather, got out and ran and dispersed into the town. I saw it once. I was shocked. It was one of the most surreal, frightening things I've ever seen. And then it happened again. And I was there for an hour, two.
So is that happening constantly, do you think?
Yeah.
Or so
Yeah.
it wasn't just a random thing that just because you were there, suddenly it all happened? Yeah.
Well, I can't think why that would all happen if I was there.
Yeah, because you'd be the last person you'd want to see it.
Yeah. And decided to put on a show for me. I think it must be happening constantly because I wasn't there for very long. And it just blew my.
And they must be told what to do for them to just disperse, because otherwise you'd kind of just be milling about, wouldn't you? If you were, and are these? Because we're told, aren't we, that they're women and children and families, and they're doctors and scientists and all these things. What are they when they come?
Come on, look. I don't know where they're getting the money from to pay the people traffickers. I suspect that's not coming from them. I suspect it's coming from left-wing organizations, and I suspect that's who's giving them the guidance as well. They're not ashamed of it. You'll see little booklets produced on how to get there, how to claim asylum, how to get all your benefits, all this stuff produced by really hard left organizations who despise the West and want to bring it down. And this is one of the ways they're going to do it. So I suspect they're paying for it. But Middle East, Africa, people leaving poverty. But I'm sorry, and I'm sorry to sound hard-hearted, or maybe I'm not. We are blamed for poverty in the third world. The Europeans, left the third world a long time ago in terms of colonial power. Gave them a lot of money, and they're still living in poverty. I'm sorry, there comes a time when you have to look at yourself. Say,
I talked to my mum about this, and she said when she was a little girl, so this would have been 40s, 50s, she said they were raising money then for Africa, and she said, and it's never stopped. So she said, when does it stop?
It never does stop.
Yeah.
It never does stop. Even back in the 80s, you had Live Aid, and then you had a second one in the 90s, I think, wasn't there? Live 8 or something. Yeah. It's constant. You can't turn on daytime television without seeing appeals for money for this or that. And you say, well, when are they going to? Stand on your own feet, and to blame colonialism for their plight is absurd. They were probably much better off in colonial times anyway. But no,
I've just written an article about colonialism in response to Tom Daly, who is a diver, and he's also a knitter, which is why it's kind of relevant. It really annoyed me because one of the things that I point out in the article is that he was saying that we introduced anti-homosexual laws in these countries, but we didn't actually. We introduced anti-buggery laws, which were in place here. It didn't matter whether you were in an African part of the empire or whether you were in Australia or whether you were here. Everybody was treated the same under that law. And then we repealed that law in 1967. Well, and also I think from the 1930s, most of the Commonwealth, as they became self-governing. It's like at any point from the 1930s right up till now, those countries could have repealed that law. But the ones that have chosen not to, there's a reason they've chosen not to. And I think one of the things is like you can't keep blaming the people from years ago that are dead. You need to look at the people today that are in power that haven't changed those laws. They're the people, not the colonialists.
What the irony of it all is, and I, at the opportunity I have, I say this to them. It is a form of white supremacy. To blame Europeans for everything that's wrong with the world is white supremacy. We are so powerful that other people do not act of their own volition. They merely react to the powerful white leaders of the world. That is their position. So if they blame us for absolutely everything, so a black person runs amok with a machete, somehow it's our fault. because we are so powerful and everyone else is beneath us. And therefore, we have to be careful not to do anything to upset the subspecies of this is their view.
Yeah.
They'll never call it that, but
I
they are
think
white
you,
supremacists.
I think I
Extraordinary.
once heard you refer to this. I think you were the first person I heard say this. Is it's like the racism of low expectations, that everybody is
Absolutely.
treated in a lesser way and they get away with more.
Yes.
Because there was a case, going back to the rape stories, there was a case, I believe, where he'd raped a girl and he got away with it because he didn't understand in his culture that it wasn't okay to rape. And a British court
Yes.
let him go. That's right, isn't it? You know of the story, don't you?
Absolutely.
So that is an example of racism of low expectations, because surely we should be judging every rapist by the same standards.
But what gets me is, what about the girl? The girl is this irrelevant.
Yeah,
Well, she's had her life shattered. She'll take years to recover from this. But never mind her. What matters is whether or not he knew it was wrong. He said, I didn't know it was wrong. It's normal for me. And in saying it's normal for me, he's admitting how awful that culture is. And the court then sympathizes with him. If I say rape is sort of normal for them, I'll be called a fascist. The whole thing is insane. And I call it's, communism. It resembles communism in every which way. There's no consistency. There's no value of truth. There is. It's an extraordinary. We're living in a pseudo-communist.
Well, I got a book arrived this morning, and it's a knitting book, and it's by a knitter who's dead now called Elizabeth Zimmerman, and I recommend the book. She's a bit weird in what she did, but anyway. And she married a German in the 30s, and she lived in Germany right up until the war. And there's one little bit in it, and I just thought, she's describing not only the knitting world now, but she's describing our culture, where she was talking about the brown shirts overhearing her German husband criticizing an MP at the time, or somebody in power at the time. And the brown shirts came up to him and basically said, we're going to put you in a camp for that, and then they had to run away, because they weren't able to speak what they wanted to say. And so it's not even just communism, is it? It's any totalitarianism. That's what they're doing to us, isn't it?
Yeah, we really are in it. The tearing down of statues, the rewriting of history, this destruction of British history and European history to reset, to restart.
The Great Reset.
Wasn't it Cambodia where?
Was it year one or was year zero?
Yes. Year
Pol Pot, wasn't it? Pol Pot.
Pol Pot, of course. Yeah, didn't he start again year one? That's basically what we're doing by tearing down history. We're looking for a year one. The communists are looking forward. But it's just this fear of being called. Here's my dog.
Which one's this? What's she called?
Jenny, say hello, sweetheart.
Oh. What kind of a dog is she?
She's a Cocker Spaniel.
Yeah, I can only see her nose, so I can't tell.
With short hair. She's not supposed. Cockers normally have long flowing hair, don't they? But not Jenny. She's had a haircut recently because it's too hot, isn't it, sweetheart?
So, sorry, going back to what you're hoping to set up to do with the... Is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to that?
Well, what I want to do is provide legal advice and legal support for people who do want to report rape to the police and to keep an eye on the police, and to if the CPS decide not to prosecute when I think there's glaring evidence there, and I understand criminal law, I want to pursue the judicial review. Maybe if you get the right case, you can look for a judicial review, which is a review of a government body's decision in a particular matter. So if the CPS were to decide in the face of glaring evidence not to prosecute, I want to know why, and to pursue a judicial review of this, because the CPS offers no explanations for why it doesn't pursue rape cases, even when the evidence is even when there's a child, for example, who exists, who DNA shows belongs to this guy. DNA shows she was 13 when she was pregnant. That's not just evidence, it's proof. That is open and shut. But the CPS declined to prosecute, and that just nobody questions. So that is where I would like to go. But I also want to offer simple support. I would like to offer counselling, and I would like to offer group support for the victims of this terrible crime to come together and support each other emotionally, but also legally. Someone who knows the law should be going into police stations with these victims and staying with them through the process to keep a bloody eye on the police. Because I'm telling you, I know the law better than the police do, and I'll be watching everything they did. That is the kind of service I want to start. It's going to take me some time, but if anyone would like to support me, greatly.
I was just going to say, how can people support you? Is there a way of helping you out?
My Facebook page is probably the only thing I've got left at the minute that is public and people can contact me through. I obviously have an email address, which is amwaters@hotmail.com. That would probably be the easiest way for people to contact me if they do want to support me. I'd very much appreciate it.
I'll put that in the comments below.
Thank you.
And so, are you going to try and raise money for this as well? Is this? Are you? Yeah. Have you had thoughts on how you're going to do that, or?
I'm going to be really honest again. I only closed the party a few weeks ago, so I'm still in a sort of putting my ideas down on paper thing. I know what I want to do. I know the legal structure it's going to take. I've got my trustees lined up, for example. It's just a matter of maybe I need a little bit longer of a break from it before I get into it again. And that's the honest truth. I need a break. I've been doing this for 18 years.
I think you deserve one. I do.
18 years. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break. But I know what I'm going to do. It's picking the moment to start.
Are you? Do you think you'll be able to get publicity, or do you think they're just going to ignore you again?
I will go back to basics. I'm restricted on Facebook. I'm banned from Twitter. I am heavily censored on YouTube. So I like basics. I like leaflets. I like local newspapers. I will start there. I'll start locally.
Yeah, Truth Social is now available for British people, so you could go on there. I don't know how useful that would be.
I haven't even looked at it. I
joined yesterday, but there's nobody on there. I'm just following Donald Trump at the moment because I don't know who else to follow.
I think I'll probably just start locally and stick with local publications and start there. What I want to do first, and I'll do this very soon, is just hire a hall, get an ad in local newspapers, get some local leaflets out, asking people, victims of this crime, that there's a meeting here on this date, and start from there. That's what I intend to do.
And is with the grooming gangs, it's everywhere, isn't it? But I was going to say, is there any particular area of the UK that is worse than any other for this, for rape?
Everywhere there are huge numbers of Muslims. I know it's the truth. It's the truth. One of the things, I live in Hartlepool, and it's this was a whiter than white town. We're seeing a lot of changes, a lot of demographic changes taking place, and there's not a doubt in my mind that we will see this crime come here now. It's going to be the whole country. If you look at the Linton on Ouse controversy recently, are you familiar with this one? Small town in Yorkshire. They were going to put 1,500 of these migrants into this. So there's 800 people in it. They were going to put 1,500 migrants.
So it's a village, is it? They were going to double the village with migrants, weren't they?
Outnumbered by people.
And were they all men?
Yeah, of course. And even immediately, police were telling girls not to wear shorts, and so that's coming. That's coming. What
annoys me, and this seems like common sense to me, but maybe I'm just so naive that it's unbelievable. But if I was in charge of immigration of any kind, I think I would say one male, one female. No matter how it's coming in, so that you have to have a balance. It's like an ecosystem, isn't it? You have to have a balance of what, because if you have too many men, what are you going to get? if you have too many women, you end up with polygamy. And that's what's happened in the Middle East over the years, isn't it? That's why that existed. But if you have too many men, what they want partners, they want sex. So it's just inviting a problem. So the other thing I was going to say is who do they target? Sorry, we kind of should have talked about this a bit earlier, but the girls that they target, why do they pick those girls?
Well, there is a pattern, I think, among the grooming gang victims, is that a lot of them come from difficult homes where they're not really being looked after at home. A lot of them are girls who are in care homes or under the quote unquote care of the local authority. So they come from broken homes. They're not for everyone by any means, but for the most part, I think these are girls who haven't got anyone looking after them. Who are very vulnerable to flattery, to someone who appears to care about them. They're very because they don't have love and support at home. They are looking for it elsewhere. Someone then brings along this. It's a bit like gang membership. You'll often find young men going into gangs haven't got the support at home that they need, so they look for that family support, that love, that elsewhere, and end up getting into gangs and getting into all sorts of trouble. It's a similar thing. These girls are not looked after properly, and they find this guy will target them, treat them well initially, and the girl is in. She's hooked, and then he will pretend to be her boyfriend. Happens a lot. Often he'll take photographs of her, and then use those photographs to blackmail her. Right. And then before she knows it, it's you have to sleep with my friend. If you loved me, you'd sleep with my friend. And before she knows it, she's being prostituted around the country.
Yeah, because there's a
14-year-old girl.
Yeah, because there's another issue, isn't there? Is that our taxi system seems to have been completely taken over by Muslims. And is it true that, I'm not saying all Muslim taxi drivers by any means, but they're using the taxi system to ferry them around all over the country, aren't they? Absolutely. And then that's also another way they're entrapping the girls by saying, you now owe me the taxi fare to take her to be raped.
It's evil. Evil exists. Evil exists.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, so let's lighten the mood up slightly, because it's been quite a serious talk, hasn't it? And I think it's really brilliant that you're doing this, because nobody else is doing this, are they? And the thing is, it's like the fact that it takes somebody as evil as you to do this means that I don't know. Anyway, right. So I've got some quick fire questions. There's only 10 of them, and I'll just take your first answer. You can't think too much about it. You do have to choose. Some of them are daft, but there's some that you'll be like, ooh, I don't know. I'm going to answer that one. Okay, knit or pearl?
Knit.
Red or blue?
Blue.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
That surprises me with your Irish background. I thought you'd be a tea person. This will be hard for you. Cats or dogs?
I still have to say dogs. I love my cats, but I still have to say dogs.
Scarves or hats?
Scarves.
And this is if you have to do one or the other. Masks or vaccines?
Oh, God. Well, I have to say masks, because at least masks are not injecting yourself with an untested poison. Oh, God, am I allowed to say that? We almost got there, didn't we? Without saying anything that might get you kicked off YouTube.
I don't think
it'd have to be masks. At least you can take that off. You can't take the vaccine back out, can you?
Yeah. Okay, this one's going to be a hard one. For the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss?
Liz Truss, but it has to be none of them. There's nobody in the Tory party I want for Prime Minister. But I loathe Rishi Sunak, so it has to be Liz Truss.
Yeah, it's a Hobson's choice, isn't it, as they say. King Charles or King William?
Oh, William.
Summer or winter?
Winter.
Oh, good. That's me too. Are you early to rise or late to bed?
Early to rise, definitely.
And the last question, this isn't a yes or no, but the last one is, can you define a woman?
It's a adult human female, someone who was born female and who grew up to become an adult. Female
Is so
only
Eddie Izzard then?
is a man.
The swimmer, Leah?
Is a
That's Captain
man. William, you mean? William is a man.
And who's the really famous one now? Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner.
Man. Sorry, look. I don't have anything. You know, there are some. It sounds like I'm not racist. I have black friends, sort of thing. I don't blame every transsexual, as we used to call them, for this.
Yeah.
But most transsexuals back in the day didn't do this, didn't want access to women's toilets, and they would go, there's always a third toilet, disabled toilet, right? This is absurd. They never used to want to be in women's sports. This is...
Well, they wanted to completely blend in, didn't they? They didn't want to be noticed. So, for example, like there's cases, isn't there now, where a trans woman who still has all the male bits wants to get changed naked in front of women, whereas what I would consider a true trans person would want to hide away in a cubicle. At least they wouldn't want people to see them naked. And I think that's how you can tell which people are genuine in what they're saying and which ones are what's it called? Is it autogynephilia?
Oh, autogynephilia, yeah. A guy who's turned on by the thought of wearing women's clothes.
Yeah, it's what the old
transvestite in my view today. That's what most of them are in my view today. It is just appalling. I mean, you might have heard of that story in Beverly Hills where this guy was walking around the women's changing room, not just with his penis out, but with an erect penis. And there were children there. And when women complained about this guy, they were told, she's a woman. She identified. For God's sake!
Have you seen the Ricky Gervais?
Oh,
clip? It's so good, isn't it? Where it's like
a little bit in love with Ricky Gervais.
Oh yeah! If you get the chance to watch that, I think you should try and search it out because it's hilarious. So Ricky Gervais.
Is it the one on Netflix at the moment?
Yes, it's only recent, isn't it?
I've watched
I'm surprised. I'm surprised it's still on there. I'm surprised they haven't taken it off. Yeah.
Oh, you see, he's Ricky Gervais. He's big. It's a bit like J.K. Rowling, isn't it? They're so big that they just don't need to care.
Yeah. Well, J.K. Rowling is a funny case because on almost every other respect, I disagree with that.
Me too.
But on this, I fully support her, and because of that, I think she's great just because of this. But almost everything else, I don't agree with. But and somebody said this the other day. She's kind of like, really, she's the poster girl for the left.
Yes. Well, in many ways, yeah. I mean, she was calling for us to let in refugees, and look,
she wasn't she? Yeah.
The woman lives in a gated castle in Scotland. In the middle of nowhere in Scotland. Yeah. Gated castle. And she's telling everyone to take in. The refugees are going to be in the working class estates. They're going to be causing problems for working class people. They're going to be raping working class girls. You're all right in your gated castle.
Speaking of that, there's here in Salford where I live, there's a hotel not very far away. And that has now been completely taken over by migrants. And this is anecdotal, so it's not through the news because obviously they're not reporting it, but one of the staff has been raped apparently, and I only know because somebody knows her mother that knows someone I know. So whether it's actually true or not, I don't know, but that is something else that's happening.
Certainly believable.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we've gone over, I said an hour, didn't I? And we've gone an hour and a half, so I could have talked to you for about 10 hours, honestly. So thank you for coming on, and if there's anything we can help you with, the knitters, with setting up what, I don't know, what are you going to call it? Do you have a name for this?
I'm going to call it, see, this is a difficult one. I've got a pad full of names and I haven't quite decided. See, I really am early stages. I'm going to need, if anyone can, I'm going to need some, at risk of being crass, I'm going to need support and financial support to get it off the ground. But I think, look, if anyone who looks at my history in politics or in activism will know that I will do this.
Yeah, you will. Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm something airy fairy that I'm not going to actually do. I'm being really honest about where I am with it, which is at really early days. I'm also being really honest with saying I'm having a break before I get into this fully.
Any money you raise, I can guarantee you're not going to be buying a private jet.
No, I will not.
You're not that kind of person, are you? Yeah.
I don't. I can't even afford an EasyJet flight. That's a private jet, my word. But no, if I say I'll do it, I'll do it, or at least do my very best to do it.
What about help in terms of things people can do? So, for example, there's a lady I know that helps me with the magazine doing graphic design, and she does that for free. Is there anything like that you need help with?
I think what I would look for is there are people out there who have expertise in criminal law. I'll need volunteers for that. I'd also need counselling therapists who are specialised in rape and sexual abuse. If they are, I've got one counsellor signed up. If there are counsellors and therapists out there, or lawyers who specialise or know of this law, if I get an initial team behind me, would boost things enormously. So that if there are people watching who have expertise in those two areas.
And I'm going to make a prediction now. Do you know what I think will happen?
What?
I think because it's you that's doing this, somebody on the left is going to suddenly do something similar and say that they came up with the idea. Because that's something that I've noticed over the years, is that your manifesto points, when it was for Britain, other parties used to steal them. So I bet they will. So they'll suddenly, try to sideline you again, but hopefully it won't happen.
I shall prevail.
Well, you are one of life's survivors, aren't you?
What's that?
Well, you are one of life's survivors because I've kind of followed you for a decade now, probably, give or take, and that's something I've noticed about you. Oh, you've just tell us about your books as well. So let's plug your books because you've written 2 books. I know one's called Beyond Terror, and what's the other one called?
It's called In Defense of Democracy.
And where can people get those?
Amazon.
So if they've not been banned?
No, I haven't. No, on Amazon, believe it or not.
They've Hope Not Hate have overlooked that one, haven't they?
Beyond Terror was particularly good. It was Amazon's bestseller for a time in some countries, so I'm really proud of that. And in Defense of Democracy, I did some years later. They're both on Amazon. And
do you keep a diary?
I keep a journal. I wouldn't necessarily call it a diary, but I write things down.
When you're 70, I'll be long gone by then, but when you're 70, you need to write your autobiography because I think it's going to be fascinating.
Let's see.
Anyway, on that note, Anne-Marie Waters, you have been blocked.